Hello YouTube, it's Matt here, and today I'm going to be talking again about this delta membrane system. I'm going to touch a little bit on Victorian London and why I'm in this space and what it would have been used for, if you're interested. This kind of thing interests me. And specifically, the crux of the video will be talking about how I actually put these studs on the vaulted ceiling and how I plan to do the plasterboard. I haven't done it yet, so I don't know if the plan will work, but we're going to find out, I guess. So first of all, about the space, this is what we call the coal hole. Actually, it's a cellar. Well, it was a cellar, and previously when we got to it, it was very stinky and wet and damp, and actually not we didn't have this amount of head height. We kind of lowered it slightly. Actually, this is the original head height because I'm standing on the step that we didn't lower, and then we lowered this bit. What they used to do in Victorian London, this was built in around 1840, I think, or 1839. The plans were drawn up. And in Victorian London, what they used to do is they used to go around with horse and cart, up and down Chiswick High Road in this case, and they would drop coal through the little holes outside the front doors of each of the houses into a cellar underground, because the set out of a lot of Victorian London has these, we call them lower ground floors. So they're not full basements. So they're not, you don't have a ground floor and then on the same level as a street and a basement. What we have in a lot of Victorian London is we have this kind of halfway house. So you've got the ground floor is actually like up 4 steps from the street level, 4 or 5 steps, which is quite sensible if you think about it for waterproofing reasons. And then the lower ground would have been kind of under that, and they would have dug not all the way down to the height, but because obviously the roof of the lower ground floor was about here, so it only needed to dig down a little bit, and as such the coal hole would have been about here because it had to be below the street level, so it was always kind of crouchy to get under, because it needed to be a room and it was underground, and they didn't have suspended concrete slabs back then. What they did is they made it out of a brick arch, and that's what this is. So we've got a brick arch above here, and you can't see, but there is, if I were to kind of slit this open, this membrane, I could put my whole hand up the hole, and the hole is where they drop the coal, is about, I think it's about 11 inches diameter, and there was a plate on top. So if you walk around London and look at your feet around the outside of a lot of houses, a lot of old houses, you'll see these very kind of interesting decorative coal plates. These were kind of, cast iron plates with different designs on, proudly, extolling the virtues of the area that they were kind of cast in or fired in. So we've got, ones from Notting Hill, and I've got a book about coal plates. I won't bore you too much with it. Jeremy Corbyn, interestingly, I think was fascinated with coal plates as well. So I don't know why particularly, but they're pretty fascinating things. Anyway, so you can use them to trace the history of London. Anyway, I digress. Actually, shall I show you a coal plate? Because we had one above here. So the history of our building is we had the, obviously the arch is internal, and then above it is flat. But ours had paviors over, these kind of modern cementitious paviors. And when we pulled those paviors up, which we had to do to build this basement through here, which you can see, when we pulled those paviors up, we found the original coal hole, which the coal plate, the cast iron coal plate, which was super exciting. Literally, as you pull the paviors up, we found this kind of membrane underneath, the waterproofing membrane, and then there was the coal hole and this beautiful York stone. It's an enormous York stone flag, which was just stunning, and we've obviously kept it, and we're going to put it back in. Unfortunately, the plate was broken when we got to it, and someone had this kind of dodgy silicone job around it to kind of keep the water out, which it didn't. Anyway, I'll show you that. I'll show you that now, in fact. I'm going to go up our new concrete suspended staircase that we put in a year and a half ago, and up onto here, and this is where the coal hole was. We took all the paviors up, and actually we put concrete back down because the state of what was under there was very, very bad indeed, and so we needed to cover it with concrete. Anyway, this is the York stone. Can you see this? And the original cold plate that we had was this one here. You can see it's in pretty bad condition, and it says Westminster Westminster Safety, P. Burt and Potts. Westminster Safety, P. Burt and Potts. It's got this lovely kind of star kind of thing on it, but it's broken. See, someone's obviously at some point tried to like kind of rip that out, and it's a bit rusty. Anyway, I found one. I've been looking on eBay for years, and I found this one from some guy who'd had it in a salvage yard, and it's different. Just to confuse anyone who looks into the history of this building, it's a different design. You see these are pretty common in London, and this one says John C. Aston and Sons to Essex Road, Islington. We're not in Islington at all, but look at this beautiful York stone. Once you clean that up, it looks really gorgeous. So we're going to actually set that back down within the stone. We've got to put insulation on top of here, so it's going to lift the level of it up, and we're going to put that in with a level. But this is all already waterproofed. It's waterproof from the inside, but we've also put a membrane over the outside. Anyway, that's a little bit of interesting history about the cold plates found in this building. Back down I go to the kind of very messy, still a building site, this light well here that we've got, and in we go. Oops, back to the coal cellar. This is what it looks like. You can see the step down that we've made, because obviously this is a basement, so you had to step it down into there. And the main thing that I wanted to talk about today was the, this vaulted roof. We had to repoint some of it because the mortar pointing was coming out, so obviously we repointed it in lime mortar to repair it. It's got some interesting kind of things that I've kind of started work on and almost finished. We've got this kind of double stepped situation. What I've done here is I've followed the original form of the outside steps. There is actually, I believe, a lintel that goes across here. At least I flipping hope there is. And you can see I've started to kind of use spray foam insulation to get the plasterboard as tight to that curve, because we've got a curve. So I'm calling this the cubby. Now this is just a little area that is arched in this direction, which is quite interesting, isn't it? I'm calling this the cubby area. And we're going to use curved plasterboard in this direction, and then the plan is we're going to use we've got some linear LEDs going there and there at different heights, kind of pushing the light up over the curve, and I think we're going to do something fancy with the ceiling, like maybe gilting with gold, or perhaps, I mean, we're going to do everything DIY, so we're going to do it with kits, but we're going to do something quite fancy with the ceiling here. We've got this weird bit that drops down a bit lower, so I'm not sure how to tie this curve into this droppy bit that then has this bit. And again, I'm keeping this, can you see that comes down like this? I'm keeping that form as much as possible, because we're going to have a glass above the door that goes here, and we're going to get as much light in as possible, because Anna is going to be using this as her makeup station, which doesn't resemble a makeup station now, but we're going to put cupboards here and here, and then there's going to be a little makeup station that's a gas meter. Oh wow, that was a mini tour I wasn't expecting to give. The main purpose of this video is showing how I am putting these into these plugs. I wonder if you can get a bit better light on there. No, it's in shadow there, unfortunately. So if I would choose one further down, you can see it. So what I've done is I've lined the edge of this up with the edge of this plug, not including the sticky black stuff which I showed you in my previous video. And there's a plug there, there's a plug there, and I've gone to the end plug and I've lined this one up with the edge as well. The light's a bit dodgy so you can't see, but that's what I've done. Now I'm going to go and by eye, I'm going to mark where I think the centres of these are. So there's one's there. And I've held this, so this wood is roofing batten. That's 25mm by 50mm, which I find really good for doing lots of little jobs like this. We've used it, so you're not studding the main walls out. You'd not use roofing batten because it's too thin. But perhaps I can show. Yeah, so for example, this is our area here with lots of cables. We've used roofing batten to kind of stud this out a little bit because we needed as much depth as possible. Anywho, let's run back through here. And yeah, so we're using this 25 by 50 and I'm just marking the centres. I've done that one. I'm going to mark the centre here with, I'm just eyeballing it because it doesn't have to be bang accurate. And then you can see these ones are not, that one's kind of off to the right a bit more than that one, a bit more than that one. So I'm going to now get my tape measure, and this is going to be a funny way of doing it. This is how I've been doing it. I'm measuring, again, eyeballing it to the centre, and I'm making that about, from my angle, it might be different to where the camera sees, but about 11 mil. So I'll go, that's 11, that's about 1. So 11, 1, 10, and 13. 11, 1, 10, and 13. 11, 1, 10, 13. Right, and then I will take this down. I wonder if I might swap over the camera so you can... So I'm going to remove this prop, and there we go. And of course I've got my marks on the side of this bit of wood. And what I will do is I'm going to now mark out my measurements on the board. So let's just spin the camera again. So I've marked the measurements I took earlier, 11, 1, 10 and 13. And to remind myself, it goes up this way, and it was 11 off from the right hand edge to the centre of the plug. Right, so obviously we're not going to be putting a screw in the right hand edge, so we're going to shift that back by, I don't know, let's take an average, 11, 1, 10 and 13, let's just go with 5. So we're going to call the centre is our 5, and then 11, that would be a difference of 6 off from the centre. So I'll, remark that to make the point. So that's 6. So this would be minus, what was I doing? 5 from the centre. So this would be minus 4. And this would be 5. And this 13 would be, what am I doing? Minusing 5, aren't I? Yeah, so 8. Is that correct? I think so. I'll do a double check before I do it. So that's what I want to measure. And again, that's off from the right I'm measuring. Sorry, that's from the centre I'm measuring. And it's to the right from the centre. So if I line something up, let's say I line up, let's say 60 mil. I'll do that. Let's just get that. I'm struggling to do this with 2 hands. Right, that 60 mil is, there we go. I'll do that up. So my 60 millimetres, where it says mark 60, that's about my centre line. So I'm going to go off 6. So I'll mark this one as 66 along this line that I've made. I think that's what is correct. So can I do this and hold it? I don't think I can do this and hold it at the same time. Yes. So you can see I've marked 6 from the centre there. I've marked 1 from the centre there. Oh dear. That should be minus 4. See? This is what happens. So this should be 56. That should be, because it's 60 minus 4. I'll change that. This should be 5 from the centre, because that was my 5. And this should be 8 from the centre. Can you see that mark? 8 from the centre. That's about right. I've got to change this one here. So as you can see, I have marked the minus 4 out, and I've scrubbed the other one out, so I just noticed the one on the left. That's at 56 on my ruler. And I'm going to get my Forstner bit, and what I'll do is I'll kind of put my eye around here. I can see it better than you, but I'm just going to get that in the middle of there. That's difficult to do with one hand, actually. There we go. And then I'm just going to do my special wang. That'll do. No, a bit more actually, because I can't get a washer in there. It's a bit not thick enough. There we go. That'll do. Get the thickness of a washer in there, I think. So it's got to be the thickness of the washer plus, obviously, I'm using just wood screws, which are conical so it'll stick out is what I'm trying to say. So I'll give it a bit more. Again, that's not how you use a Forstner bit. How you use a Forstner bit is you go slowly. But if you're not doing fine woodworking and you don't care about your Forstner bit, and you're impatient, it does cut. Also, we're using construction lumber, as they would say in the US, which is a bit softer than what most people use Forstner bits for. So, anyway, I've done all of my 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm just going to chuck a hole in with a 10mm bit, using my leg to hold it up. Wang it around a bit as well, because the reason is I want it to be quite a bit wider than the screw, so that so it can go through at an angle and it'll still hit the plug, and that's the purpose of doing this. Obviously the washer and the screw are going to hold it. So I don't really mind how big the hole is. Great. Makes a right old mess. And then we're going to come and get our pack of washers. Now, again, I'm going to be careful with this screw size. So that's 25mm thick. And remember from the last video I said the plugs are 35mm. So that's 60. So I will use 60 screws. If I use 50, I'll be missing out on 10mm of hold within the actual plug. So I'm going to get my trusty 60mm screws, not from there, but from, yeah, we've got 40s, 60s. Excellent. And then I think I'll set this back up. Right, I've set the camera back up. I've got my trusty stainless steel. They don't need to be stainless steel, but they were the only ones you could find of this size. I've got my 60mm screws. Get 4 of these out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then chunk the 2 end ones in, I think. Washer on screw, in mouth. Washer on screw, in mouth. Washer on screw. This is the approved method. The approved method. Right. I'll do that by hand. I'll put this in here. Chuck that in there. Boom. I'm just going to do it on up and restore it by hand. Can't see, can I? I'll put it in here and boom. You know, job. And of course that one's a little bit out because I can't measure properly. But it doesn't matter because my hole's a bit bigger. And hopefully I got these the right way around and I measured from the correct edge. Yes, it's all looking good. Look, they're all going in. Can you see? 1, 2, 3. And really the only way of hitting these plugs successfully... Oh, that doesn't feel like a 60mm screw. Yes, it is. The only way of doing this successfully really is doing it like this. This is not what it says on the instructions at all. And gently push in. Use a little impact driver. 1. I'm going to get them all in at the same time. Right, this is a bit smacking against that bit of wood, unfortunately. Yes, that's lovely. That now felt like it pulled a bit. No, the click makes me happy. The 3 clicks makes me happy. Or make me happy. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh yeah, that is something I'm very, very pleased with. I think I do get nervous when I put screws into these plugs that are in this brick because the brick is soft. Remember I mentioned it's a lime mortar arched vault, you know, vaulted arch, or whatever the words are. And so of course I'm worried that these can pull out any time. I mean, if I hung off of this with my weight, it could easily come out. So I'm really relying on distributing the weight of the plasterboard across lots of screws. I don't think it would come out if I hung off of it. I'm pulling quite hard, actually. I'm twisting and pulling, and there's not much movement, but I would not want to be pulling on these real hard because for obvious reasons. So that's that one done, and I'm quite pleased with it. Yeah, I'm actually very pleased with that indeed. One of the problems with the fact that these are not all central is that if one is set off to the right of the centre, it kind of twists it that way. And if one's set off to the left of the centre, it twists it that way. So if you do this one on the right of the centre up harder than the ones on the left of the centre, then the whole thing twists, which means when you put your plasterboard down, it won't be at the right angle. In fact, this could do with going this angle a bit more. But you know what? I'm just gonna do nothing about it, and I'm just gonna touch the plasterboard on. It doesn't have to be flat as it comes around. I'm not really gonna be bothered. I'm just gonna let everything pull together. Right, so I've put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is my 5th and final one. As you can see, I've just kind of hand tightened the first one. I've rested this on the side bit here, so I can use one hand. I've got a bit of wood sticking out there, which I probably should remove that so that it doesn't poke into the membrane. And there we go, it's gone. You can see we've done a bit of a repair around this one. I'm not sure why that was. I'm just going to screw this in by hand, and I can get it about that far in. And then my prepared 60mm screws. Oops. As every one I'm doing, I'm just double checking that it's going in, and you can see it is going in there. That's good. Yeah, I can feel that's gone in a little bit. Check this is not too, yeah, and it fits. I'm happy. So yeah, without this method of this kind of Forstner bit and the washer and the wider hole, the wider diameter hole, it is very difficult, and I've tried many times. And invariably, well, you can see what ends up happening is, so these were done without that method. And you can do it if you measure really well and you keep your bits bang straight. Interestingly, these haven't been countersunk because I didn't do these myself. So normally I would countersink these so they don't like pop out and get loose or anything. But anyway, yeah, it might seem really over the top doing this, but I don't think it is over the top at all, actually. I think it's one of the only ways of doing it reliably, and especially if you've got soft brick and it's hanging off of that soft brick. You don't really want to be forcing these things at the wrong angle. And you certainly don't want to be forcing these things at the wrong angle. It's going to be, really important that you don't pull these plugs out. These plugs are what keeps the water out. And if water comes in, imagine I've plasterboarded over here, and then someone's come along and plastered it, not me, because I'm not a plasterer. And then water tracks through, that's always going to be wet until I pull it down. Well, how am I going to pull the plasterboard down? How am I going to get to that wet plug, which I'll be able to locate immediately because I'm going to have photos of all of this. But how will I get to that plug that's come out and leaking water if I can't pull all of the plasterboard down? And when I pull the plasterboard down, by the way, it's been plastered over, how am I going to get that down? Well, I'm going to pull hard on the plasterboard down, and I'll tell you what, the whole flipping studs might come off with it in this case. So I might think about actually not plastering it, but instead putting curved plasterboard and then tape and jointing, and then making a note of where all of the screws are. And then if I ever need to remove, I'm going to do it in sections as well. I'm not going to use a big piece. I'm going to plasterboard it in sections going this way. And the reason is the bendy plasterboard I've got is this Cineat 6mm, which you can get, actually, here it is. You can see it's bending already. I've left it bending in that direction because I kind of want it to end up bending in that direction. And this is Cineat 6mm curved. I don't know, can we see on here? Avoid breathing down, whatever. But this is Cineat 6mm. It's not called curved plasterboard. It's called is it former contour board? It's called contour board. So I think we might be taping and jointing that. If anyone's got any bright ideas actually about, I really don't plan for this to leak. And as I say in my last video, we installed this a number of years ago. These plugs have held the water out, by which I mean you can see, I've showed this in the last video, you can see there's water above here, and every time I come along, for years this has been up, and I've touched it and there's not a drop of water anywhere. It's really, really good at holding the water out. I do think it's unlikely if water were to get here that it would actually just come out of the hole anyway, because it will eventually seep down if it were dripping, but it's more kind of moisture than water we're talking about here. But either way, imagine if I had to, you know, do a waterproofing repair on the inside. What would I do? How would I take this down without, you know, risking? If I'm screwing into these, I'm going to be using 25mm screws so that I don't go out the back of them and pierce the back. How on earth would I take that plasterboard down? I mean, there's an argument to be said that I should actually be using sheet metal with screws that can be removed at a later date to actually maintain or repair the waterproofing, because actually if you plaster over the whole lot, imagine I plaster over the whole lot and I need to take that plasterboard down to repair. I pull this bit of plasterboard down, the next bit comes down, and that, because the whole of this has come off, and then by the way the junction to here has been broken and that's come off, and I have to replaster this, and potentially if I pull the plug out of here I'll have to do a lot more repairs in the membrane. It's a dodgy one, I think, and I'm going to give it some more thought. I might end up not plasterboarding it in the end, but if anyone's got any bright ideas on that one, I'd be really interested in hearing them. Okay, thanks YouTube, take care, and happy building.